Money problems rarely begin with money. They begin with something far quieter, an invisible fracture inside the soul. You might think your struggles come from your job, your bills, or the economy, but the truth is older and deeper. According to ancient Jewish wisdom, what blocks abundance isn't the lack of coins in your pocket, but the lack of alignment in your spirit. I want to ask you for something before we go further. Go to the comments and write one phrase you often say about money. Maybe it's, "I can't afford this." Maybe, "I never have enough." Or perhaps, "It'll work out somehow." Don't worry about being judged. No one here is perfect. Just write it. Why? Because when you bring your inner words into the open, you begin to loosen their hold. The rabbis taught that when you name a pattern, you begin to neutralize it. A truth unspoken remains a prison. A truth spoken becomes a key. You see, in Jewish thought, wealth isn't about possession, it's about connection. Money is energy, and energy moves toward those who are open. When you speak fear, you build walls around yourself. When you speak gratitude, you open doors. It's not mystical exaggeration, it's spiritual law. Words shape the world because words shape the one who speaks them. The ancient texts call this the law of flow. They say that when your inner world is tight with worry, divine energy cannot circulate. You can work endlessly, push harder, hustle more, but if your spirit vibrates with scarcity, you attract resistance instead of opportunity. The shift begins not in your wallet, but in your words. I learned this the hard way. There were seasons in my life when I woke every morning counting debts, repeating the same anxious thoughts like prayers to a god of lack. And unsurprisingly, every door I knocked on stayed shut. Only later did I understand that my own language had locked them. The rabbis say, speech builds ladders or walls. I had been building walls with every "I can't," every "I'm broke," every quiet apology for existing in a world of abundance. But something changes the moment you decide to watch your words. The moment you realize that the phrase you repeat most often is shaping your reality like a craftsman carves stone. When I began to shift my inner dialogue from fear to faith, the outer world rearranged itself almost instantly. Not by magic, but by resonance. You might think this is only metaphor, but it's not. There's a spiritual current that responds directly to how we speak. The same current that once turned desert dust into nations, that turned words into worlds. So, if the root of money problems lies in misalignment, how do we restore flow? How do we speak in a way that heaven can answer? Let me show you the one shift that changes everything. The spiritual law behind true wealth, the secret that has been whispered from rabbi to rabbi for centuries. The rabbis never separated wealth from spirit. To them, money was not an object to be chased. It was a reflection of divine flow. In Hebrew, the word for livelihood is parnassa, and it's never used as a standalone thing. It's spoken with reverence, as something that comes through you, not to you. The idea is simple but profound. You don't own abundance, you align with it. The spiritual law behind wealth says this: everything that exists moves according to energy. Gratitude expands it, fear contracts it. The sages taught that when you speak from lack, you close the gates of blessing. When you speak from trust, you open them. That's why one of the earliest prayers in Jewish tradition isn't a request but a declaration. Thank you for what is coming. They didn't beg for prosperity, they expected it. Expectation was faith in motion. There's a story from the Talmud about a rabbi who lost everything in a single week. His students found him sitting calmly in his study, his lamp still burning. They asked, "Master, have you not lost all your wealth?" He smiled and answered, "Wealth lost is wealth returning home to rest. When it is ready, it will come again." Within days, he received unexpected help from a merchant who repaid an old debt he had long forgotten. Was it coincidence? Maybe. But in the eyes of faith, coincidence is simply the disguise of divine order. The rabbi's calm acceptance kept him open to receive. Had he drowned in despair, the opportunity would have passed unseen. We often make the mistake of thinking money is physical, that it obeys markets or luck. But the spiritual law says otherwise. Money is a mirror. It reflects your state. When your heart clenches in worry, your outer world contracts to match it. When your heart opens in gratitude, the world expands with it. This is what the rabbis meant when they said, "The blessing rests only upon what has joy." It doesn't mean fake happiness. It means alignment, an inner readiness to receive. I used to think financial peace came from working harder, from control. But the ancient wisdom flips that completely. It says, work is the vessel, faith is the content. You can build the biggest vessel in the world, but without trust it remains empty. The key is learning to live in partnership with divine flow, to act, yes, but also to surrender. The moment you release the obsession to control the outcome, you make room for unexpected blessings to enter. And yet this alignment begins in a place even deeper than gratitude or faith. It begins with your words, the very instrument of creation itself. Because if, as the rabbis say, God spoke and it was, then your words hold that same creative spark. What you say about money doesn't describe your life, it designs it. And that's where we go next, into the sacred power of speech and how language itself holds the blueprint of your abundance. In the beginning, there were no coins, no trade, no contracts, only sound. And God said, "Let there be light." That first utterance was not poetry, it was architecture. Creation began with a vibration, a word carrying intention. The rabbis believed that every human inherited that same divine mechanism, the ability to speak and therefore to create. In Hebrew, the word for word, davar, also means thing. That means every spoken phrase is a thing, a form, a structure, a seed. When you speak, you don't describe reality, you sculpt it. To say, "I'm poor," is to give poverty a home inside your life. To say, "I'm growing," is to set creation in motion toward expansion. Words are not passive, they are blueprints written in sound. Kabbalistic wisdom goes even further. It teaches that each Hebrew letter is alive, pulsing with its own spiritual frequency. When you combine letters, you generate vibrations that call certain energies into being. This is why the sages guarded their speech so carefully. They believed careless words could distort destiny. To them, gossip was not just sin, it was sabotage against one's own blessing. Now think of how we speak about money today. "I'm drowning in debt. I can't afford it. I'll never get ahead." These are not statements of fact, they are affirmations of limitation. Every repetition strengthens the vibration of lack, anchoring it deeper. The universe, obedient as always, mirrors back the frequency you send. There was a merchant in ancient Jerusalem who used to say, "My fortunes vanish as quickly as the tide." And indeed, every deal he made failed. When a rabbi overheard him, he said, "Change your tide." The man began saying, "My fortune returns as faithfully as the sea." Months later, his trade stabilized. Again, coincidence or correction? The answer depends on your perception of power. Speech has always been the bridge between invisible and visible. Scientists today might call it neuro-linguistic programming. Mystics call it Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. Whatever name you use, the principle is the same. The words you speak determine the shape of your mind, and your mind determines the texture of your reality. So the first act of spiritual wealth is not earning, it's speaking. Relearn how to talk about your life, your finances, your path. Replace every "I can't" with "I'm learning." Replace "I'm stuck" with "I'm shifting." Small changes in language create enormous ripples in experience. But there's something even deeper beneath the words themselves, the state that chooses them. Because no word rises from the mouth without first forming in the heart. The rabbis knew that speech reveals spiritual posture. Fear produces words of lack. Faith produces words of creation. So before we can speak differently, we must feel differently. And that means tracing money problems to their true root. Not in effort, but in emotion. Because at the heart of every struggle with abundance lies one shadow, one hidden source that closes the flow before it even begins. Fear. Fear is a quiet thief. It doesn't storm into your life, It slips through the cracks, whispering what-ifs until your chest tightens and your generosity dies. The rabbis called it yira, a trembling that confuses reverence with panic. They taught that true awe of life opens the heart, but fear closes it. And when the heart closes, the flow of giving and receiving collapses. You can see it everywhere. Fear makes people hoard when they should share, cling when they should release, hide when they should step forward. It dresses itself as caution, but it's really contraction, in energy, in spirit, in breath. You can't receive with clenched fists. You can't invite blessing when your soul is braced for loss. There's a saying, where fear dwells, blessing cannot rest. That isn't superstition, it's spiritual mechanics. Fear narrows the channels through which divine energy moves. Faith widens them. The moment you say, "What if it goes wrong?" you command your reality to build proof of that. But when you whisper, "It will unfold as it should," you command peace to prepare the way. I remember once being terrified of losing everything. I prayed not with love, but with panic. And nothing changed. Only when I stopped pleading and began trusting did life start to respond. It wasn't that the world shifted, it was that I did. The rabbis call this emuna, faith not as belief, but as steadiness. It's the ability to stay open even when uncertainty howls at your door. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Money behaves the same way. Fear is the grip, faith is the open palm. When you stop clutching, you stop losing. It sounds illogical, but every spiritual law is the opposite of what the anxious mind expects. And faith doesn't mean ignoring reality. The sages were practical men. They worked, they planned. But beneath their effort ran a current of trust. They acted from peace, not panic. Their confidence didn't come from what they had. It came from who they were aligned with. Ask yourself now, where in your life are you gripping too tightly? Where have you confused control with safety? Notice how your body feels in those places, tight, heavy, small. That's fear's signature. The first step to dissolving it isn't resistance, it's recognition. Because once you see fear for what it is, it begins to lose authority. And in that space of softening, something miraculous happens. The current begins to move again. Faith in truth is movement. It's the quiet decision to keep flowing even when logic says stop. That movement attracts energy, opportunities, and abundance back into orbit. But movement alone is not enough. It needs fuel, something that lifts it from effort to ease. That fuel is gratitude, the sacred currency that transforms survival into expansion. And that is where the real shift begins. Gratitude is the hinge upon which the entire universe turns. It's not politeness, not positive thinking. It's a spiritual magnet. The rabbis called it hakarat hatov, the recognition of the good. They believe that when you recognize goodness, you expand its borders. Gratitude multiplies what it touches, not because it changes the world, but because it changes your vibration to match abundance itself. One story tells of a poor man who came to a great rabbi weeping about his empty table. "I have nothing," he said. "My cupboard is bare." The rabbi asked him, "Do you have breath?" The man nodded. "Do you have strength to walk?" He nodded again. "Then thank God for that. When you thank for breath, he sends bread." The man left confused, but he followed the instruction. Within days, a neighbor shared food, and soon after, he found steady work. Gratitude didn't create food, it called it closer. I used to think gratitude was what you said after the good came. But the rabbis reversed that order completely. They said, thank before you receive. Gratitude to them wasn't reaction, it was creation. When you thank before proof, you signal faith, and faith is the invitation for miracles to arrive. Try it for yourself. Instead of saying, "I hope I'll find a job," say, "Thank you, I'm finding my place." Instead of, "I wish I had more," say, "Thank you for what's growing." Gratitude reprograms scarcity. It's the language of trust disguised as appreciation. There's a reason even modern neuroscience supports this. When you express gratitude, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals that signal safety. And safety opens creativity. That's why grateful people don't just feel better, they see more opportunities. Gratitude literally widens perception. It doesn't make you luckier, it makes you more aware of where the luck already lives. In Jewish mysticism, gratitude is considered the soul's highest currency. Money can run out, gratitude cannot. The more you spend it, the more it replenishes itself. That's why, in times of hardship, the sages never stopped blessing. They blessed the sunrise, the taste of water, even the ache of waiting. To them, every breath was a sign that possibility still existed, and that's the secret no one wants to believe. Gratitude doesn't deny struggle. It transforms it. It doesn't erase the storm. It teaches you to see rain as nourishment. So start small. Each morning, before touching your phone or your worries, whisper one thank you. For breath, for warmth, for existence. Don't wait for abundance to arrive before you express it. The expression itself is what summons it. But there's one more ingredient, one more layer of this spiritual equation that completes the shift. Because gratitude, though powerful, needs movement to stay alive. Without motion, even blessings grow stale. And that's where the next secret of the rabbis begins. The principle that turns stillness into flow and faith into fortune. The rabbis taught that life itself is motion. In Hebrew, the word nefesh, the soul, comes from a root that means to move. When movement stops, the spirit begins to decay. That's why stagnation, not suffering, was considered the greatest danger to the human being. To stop moving is to stop becoming. Abundance follows the same law. It does not settle, it circulates. It's like water, it nourishes only when it flows. When you hold too tightly, it becomes stagnant, heavy, lifeless. When you release and keep moving, it refreshes everything it touches. The sages often compared prosperity to a river. Those who try to dam it with fear eventually watch it dry. There's a story about a craftsman in Tiberias who lost everything in a storm. His workshop was destroyed, his savings gone. For weeks he sat in despair, repeating, "It's over." One morning an old rabbi found him staring at the ruins and said, "Why are you sitting beside ashes when you could walk among seeds?" Confused, the man asked what he meant. The rabbi smiled. "Bless what is broken, and move." The craftsman began gathering the pieces, thanking God for each nail, each fragment of wood. Within months, his new shop opened, better than before. Movement is not only physical, it's spiritual. When you refuse to stay still in your sorrow, you send a signal to heaven, "I'm still alive in faith." That's why the rabbis prayed while rocking their bodies. It wasn't ritual, it was rhythm. They believed that swaying while praying kept the soul in motion, ensuring that even in stillness energy flowed. Think about it. The moment you act, even in small ways, you shift the vibration of your life. You write the email. You clean the room. You take one step. These are not trivial actions. They are statements of existence. Movement tells the universe, "I am ready for more." And readiness attracts response. From a psychological view, the same truth holds. Motion interrupts fear. When you move, your brain produces momentum chemicals, dopamine, adrenaline, that lift you out of paralysis. That's why after a long walk, you suddenly feel possibility again. The body teaches the soul, forward is the only direction worth remembering. The rabbis often warned that comfort is the death of faith. They didn't mean you should never rest. They meant never confuse rest with retreat. Even gratitude must breathe. Even blessings must travel. So ask yourself, where have you stopped moving? Maybe not in your body, but in your belief. Where have you told yourself, "This is it"? The moment you can identify that stillness, you can bless it and begin again. Faith without motion fades into theory, but faith in motion becomes creation. Gratitude moves through movement. Abundance follows activity. And when faith, gratitude, and movement merge, they form a living formula, a single shift so powerful that it changes the frequency of your entire life. That formula is what the rabbis called the renewal of flow. the practice that turned scarcity into prosperity and despair into divine rhythm. The renewal of flow begins with one inner transformation, a single sentence that resets the entire current of your life. The rabbis called it the formula of becoming. It's deceptively simple, but it contains everything: gratitude, movement, and identity. The phrase is this: "Thank God I'm growing." 3 words, yet each holds the weight of creation. The sages whispered them at dawn, not to ask for blessings, but to activate them. They believed that when you speak gratitude in the present tense, heaven hears it as permission to continue giving. Let's unfold it piece by piece. Thank God. This is the language of alignment. It isn't blind optimism, it's sacred awareness. When you thank before you receive, you affirm trust in divine timing. Gratitude in this sense is not reaction, it's initiation. The rabbis taught that when you thank without proof, you draw proof toward you. It's a signal to the universe that you already recognize abundance as real, even if unseen. Those 2 letters may be the most sacred in all creation. In Hebrew, when God introduces himself to Moses, he says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I am that I am. Every time you say I am, you echo the Creator's own declaration of being. It's a reminder that you too are a co-creator. When you say you're not describing identity, you're defining it. You become the sculptor of your soul. Growing, the verb that keeps everything alive. Growth means expansion, transformation, and motion. To grow is to stay aligned with the rhythm of the universe itself, which never stops creating. The rabbi said, "The righteous never finish, they continue." To grow means to remain in partnership with the divine act of becoming. Now imagine what happens when you combine those 3 forces: gratitude, identity, and motion. Thank God I'm growing. It's not affirmation, it's activation. Each time you say it, you align with the energy of increase. You declare that your life is in movement, that blessings are not behind you or ahead of you. They are unfolding right now. I began practicing this phrase years ago when I was buried in financial uncertainty. I set an alarm for 9 each morning. When it rang, I stopped whatever I was doing and said aloud, "Thank God I'm growing." At first it felt hollow, almost performative, but after a week, something shifted. I noticed new ideas arriving, opportunities I had ignored, people appearing with solutions I hadn't considered. The external change began only after the internal rhythm stabilized. The rabbis would say that's not luck, it's resonance. When you move your words, you move your world. So try it. For 7 days, speak it aloud. Morning and night, let it settle in your body. Let the sound of growing remind you that your story isn't finished, it's unfolding. Because those who live by this formula see what others call coincidence as confirmation. And soon, we'll see how this shift has transformed real lives, proof that these ancient words still work miracles in the modern world. Let me tell you about 3 people who tested this ancient formula, ordinary lives that became living parables of faith in motion. The first was a woman named Leah, a single mother working 2 jobs and still drowning in debt. She discovered the phrase, "Thank God I'm growing," in a book about Jewish wisdom, and decided to whisper it before every shift. At first she said it bitterly, but slowly the bitterness softened. Her posture changed. Her words began to carry light instead of exhaustion. Within weeks, her employer offered her a higher position. When asked why, he said, "You show up differently. You bring peace into chaos." She laughed, remembering the rabbis saying, "Change your words and you change your presence. Change your presence, and the world reorders itself around you." Then there was Eli, a small shop owner in Tel Aviv who had lost almost everything. He began each day with worry, checking his empty shelves and sighing, "It's useless." One night, he heard an old sermon about gratitude spoken aloud. Desperate, he decided to try. "Thank God I'm growing," he repeated, even as dust gathered on his products. Within days, 2 loyal customers returned, and then 5 more. He told me later, I think the shelves didn't change. My energy did. I started talking to people with faith instead of fear. And finally, Miriam, a teacher who had always struggled with loneliness. She realized her words were full of waiting. I'm waiting for love, waiting for peace. The rabbis would call that a language of delay. So she rewrote her inner script. Thank God I'm becoming love. Within months, she met someone who reflected that same wholeness back to her. It wasn't magic, she told me. It was readiness. Each of these stories holds the same pattern. The words didn't just describe new realities, they invited them. Gratitude became frequency. Movement became magnetism. The modern world calls this manifestation. The sages called it alignment. But the meaning is identical. You attract not what you want, but what you are. When you say I'm growing, you step into partnership with expansion itself. You stop chasing, and life starts responding. This is why the formula works for anyone, regardless of faith. It isn't religion, it's rhythm. Gratitude, faith, and motion are laws as universal as gravity. You don't have to believe in them for them to operate. You only have to practice them consciously. And when you do, something remarkable happens. The same phrase that once felt like hope becomes truth. You start noticing blessings where none seemed to exist. Money begins to circulate, ideas begin to form, relationships begin to heal. These stories aren't miracles, they're mirrors. They show us what happens when language aligns with creation. But to understand the deeper reason this works, the cosmic rule that binds gratitude, faith, and energy into one pulse, we must look again to the roots of Jewish wisdom, where the law of abundance was written not in gold, but in breath. In the beginning, the world was not built with hands, it was spoken into being. And God said, "Let there be light." To the rabbis, that was not only history, but instruction. They taught that words were not human invention, they were divine inheritance. Every phrase you speak is a spark of that first utterance, carrying creative power into existence. This is the foundation of what they called the law of abundance. It states that the universe mirrors the consciousness that engages with it. In Jewish mysticism, the flow of blessing is called shefa, a sacred current that moves constantly from the higher realms into the material world. It doesn't stop. We simply close our doors to it through fear, complaint, or self-doubt. When we speak gratitude, we reopen the gates. The rabbis compared the human being to a vessel. The mind is the shape. Speech is the opening. If your words are narrow, complaining, anxious, small, the flow that enters will match that size. But if your speech widens with trust and joy, the current floods in. This is not metaphor, it is resonance. Abundance is not attracted, it is allowed. Science, in its own language, now echoes the same principle. Studies on vibration and coherence show that emotions of gratitude and compassion create measurable harmony in the body's electromagnetic field. That harmony influences perception, which then alters behavior, and behavior shapes destiny. The ancient teachers didn't need data, they had experience. They knew that when the heart opens, reality rearranges. So how does this law apply to you? Every time you say, "Thank God I'm growing," you realign yourself with the pattern of creation. You move from resistance to reception. You join the rhythm of shefa, where wealth is not a reward for effort, but a reflection of spiritual openness. This is why two people can work equally hard. One struggles endlessly, the other thrives effortlessly. The difference isn't skill, it's alignment. The rabbis never glorified poverty, but they did warn against worshiping wealth. They said prosperity should pass through you, not end with you. To hold it is to lose it. To share it is to multiply it. True abundance was never accumulation, it was circulation. Take a moment now and imagine your life as that vessel. How open is its mouth? Do your words pour gratitude or fear? Do they expand or contract the flow? The universe responds with perfect precision to the shape you offer it. This is why the shift we've explored isn't small, it's cosmic. When you change your inner language, You don't just invite abundance, you restore balance to creation itself. But even the power of words has its limit. There's a moment when speaking must give way to something higher, a sacred silence that completes the circle of manifestation. Because in the deepest level of Jewish wisdom, it's not the word that commands the blessing, it's the stillness that receives it. There is a moment after every prayer when the lips fall silent. The rabbi said that this silence is not the end of speech, it is its fulfillment. Words send the energy upward, but silence brings the blessing back down. It is the pause where heaven responds. In Jewish mysticism, this stillness is called bitul, the dissolving of self into presence. It's what happens when you stop trying to control outcomes and simply let divine rhythm flow through you. You've already spoken gratitude, you've aligned your words with creation. Now the task is to receive, to allow abundance to meet you without resistance. Think of it like the sea. When waves crash, they make sound. When they recede, the water is still. That stillness is where reflection happens. Without it, we see nothing clearly. The same is true for the soul. Constant speaking without silence is like stirring the water. You can't see what's already shining beneath the surface. So here's the final practice. The seal of this entire teaching. After you speak the phrase, "Thank God I'm growing," sit in silence for 1 full minute. Feel the echo of your words in your chest. Let the mind quiet. Don't demand, don't repeat, just receive. Imagine that every breath you take draws invisible light into your life, filling you with calm, certainty, and quiet trust. This silence is not emptiness, it's conversation in another language. It's where your gratitude becomes gravity, pulling blessings toward you. The rabbis believed that this moment of stillness allowed divine energy to settle, like dust finding the ground after a storm. Without it, even the most powerful words scatter in the wind. The truth is, abundance doesn't arrive through effort alone. It arrives through alignment, through rhythm. Words open the gates, silence lets the river flow through. When you master both, your life begins to move in harmony with creation itself. Let me bless you now, as the sages did at the close of every teaching. May the Lord bless you and guard you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. And may that peace never be stillness without life, but stillness filled with motion, the calm within flow, the silence that sings. Now that you've learned this ancient shift, test it. For 7 days, speak your gratitude aloud each morning. For 1 minute after, sit in silence and feel the echo. Watch how your world begins to mirror that balance, your thoughts calmer, your energy lighter, your opportunities closer. And when you see it working, don't keep it. Share this teaching with 3 people who need peace with money, with life, with themselves. Because the flow expands when it moves through hearts willing to carry it onward. And remember, this silence is not an ending. It's the beginning of listening. In the next lesson, we'll explore that hidden mystery, how silence itself speaks, and how its voice can summon abundance greater than words ever could.